Hi and welcome, it's Jenna from McGuire. I hope you're having a good week. Well, today I am sharing with you another idea for getting more out of your stamps and coordinating dies by creating die cut windows for your stamped images. This is something that you can do with pretty much any stamp and coordinating die. And I'm going to share with you two cards. I'm actually going to start with the more complicated one first and then go to the easier one, and also share some other tips along the way. Now keep in mind the technique that I'm doing today can be done in many different ways, and I tried a bunch of different ways, and this is the one that I felt gave the best results. Also, I want to apologize because I really struggled with lighting today, so please forgive the quality of the filming and the photos, but I promise in real life these have a lot of beautiful shine. Let's start with this card first. If you look closely, you'll see that the stamped images are heat embossed on the card, but then there's an overlay that's added on top to give dimension and has the die cut windows to go with each stamped image. Now for this card, I'm using Altenew Spicy Yogurt Cardstock. It's a beautiful cream cardstock with some speckles to it. From this, I created a note card that is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. I'm also using the new Altenew Frosted Garden stamp set. This is such a beautiful large stamp set. It is not a layering set, but rather has these single images that when you stamp provide so much detail, they're absolutely beautiful. So you can create really quick cards. There are also some great sentiments that you can build up. Okay, now I am using my MISTI for my stamping. It's a stamping tool. However, you do not need to use a stamping tool for this technique. You could definitely use an acrylic block. I'm just doing it so that I can better demonstrate in the video. Now I arranged my stamps onto my note card how I want them to be, and then I took a picture of it with my phone so I can refer back. I'm going to stamp each of these individually because I want to emboss them each in different colors. You could save a lot of time by doing them all in the same color all at once. So I'm going to start with that top image, that big flower. It's so beautiful. I'm going to add my bar magnet here to hold my note card in place. Then I'll transfer the stamp onto the door of my MISTI and I'm ready to stamp. I'm using my anti-static powder tool since we're doing embossing, and I'm stamping this with VersaMark Ink. If you're finding that your heat embossing isn't very smooth, you might need to re-ink your VersaMark Ink or get a new pad. I get a new pad every few years because I find mine get so dirty. Okay, so after I've stamped that with VersaMark Ink, I'm going to add on some Altenew Rose Gold embossing powder. This is a beautiful color. It's like gold but has a little bit of a pink tint to it that is just gorgeous. And you can see here that it embosses beautifully and gives gorgeous color. Okay, after that cools, I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next stamped image. And I'm referring to that picture on my phone to make sure I get the placement just right. So here I'm going to again use my anti-static powder tool. I think you gotta have that if you're doing heat embossing. Then I'm stamping the flower again with VersaMark Ink, and then I'm going to heat emboss again. Now this time I'm using a different metallic embossing powder, and this is the Altenew Copper. This is a beautiful dark copper color that is just stunning. I love all of these metallic powders, and here you can see the gorgeous shine that you get from that one. Okay, now for the final flower here. This one I'm going to stamp and then heat emboss with the Altenew Silver embossing powder. I thought it would be fun to use all these different metallic embossing powders on this spicy yogurt cardstock, but you could definitely do this card design in different colors or monochromatic. Okay, now there are a couple spots there on the right and on the bottom that I wanted to kind of fill in with a stamped image. So I got this little leaf here, and I'm going to stamp him, and then I will heat emboss him with the Altenew Platinum embossing powder. This almost looks like a mix between gold and silver maybe. It's absolutely beautiful too. So on this I have the different ones. I didn't use the traditional gold, instead I went for the rose gold, but you can see what the other ones look like. Now that I have all my stamping on my note card, it's time to create that piece that goes over it with the die cut windows that line up with the stamping. Now to do this, you could have done the die cutting first, then the stamping, but I found this technique to be easier. I cut a piece of vellum to be 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, which is the exact same size as this note card. I'm using vellum because I can see through it. Now I am going to hold this still in my MISTI because there's a magnet there, But you definitely don't need the MISTI for this. You could just hold it on your work surface. And I'm going to take the coordinating dies and line them up with the stamped images. I can look right through that vellum and line it up very easily. Then I'm using tiny little pieces of Mircopore tape, you could use washi tape, to tape the dies onto the vellum. So I'm lining each of the dies with the stamped image below. You could use typing paper for this because you can see through that. However, I'm using vellum because it's easier to see through and shows up better in the video. Okay, so now I'm taping on that final die right onto the vellum. And now I can remove that vellum, and on this vellum piece, all of those dies are positioned perfectly. Okay, so now I'm taking another piece of that spicy yogurt cardstock. It's cut to 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, and I'm lining up behind my vellum piece. I'm going to lay this into my die cut machine and go ahead and die cut this. The dies will cut through that vellum and the cardstock below. So now I have a cardstock piece to use on the front of my card with all the die cut flowers that'll line up with the stamping below. The vellum was just a tool to help us with this technique, but we can save those pieces for another card. Now you could have die cut all these flowers, laid it over a note card, and done the stamping through the die cut windows, but I found that I wasn't as accurate, and this really didn't take much longer. And you could actually do a few cards at once using that vellum piece, because you can see that vellum piece can be used again. Okay, now I did decide that I wanted this to be trimmed a little bit smaller than the note card. I should have trimmed this down beforehand, but I didn't think about it, so I'm just carefully trimming a little bit off of each side. I want this to be about 4 by 5 1/4. And now check it out. I can lay that on top of my card, and all the flowers line up with the die cut windows. Now I'm going to put a bunch of foam squares on the back of this. Now you could have die cut a piece of craft foam also with all those flower dies and glued that to the back for dimension, but I thought this was easy enough. So now I can line this up, and my stamped images line up perfectly with all those die cut windows. Now there are some tiny little pieces that were left behind in those flowers. I didn't attach all of them. I only attached the ones that were a little bit bigger. It really gives a cool look to have those flowers kind of set back behind the die cut windows. Now it's time to add a sentiment. I'm using a Hello die cut that's new from Altenew. I'll talk about that a little bit later. And I'm using their new Altenew Mini Blossom die cutting machine. This is a little baby die cut machine that's absolutely adorable. This is actually my first time using it, so I thought I'd give it a try on camera. You just put your paper and your wafer thin dies between the two cutting plates and feed it through. You can see that it goes through very easily, and then you can even pull out your plates very easily. So this is very fast to use. So I, of course, like a bigger die cut machine because I can cut more and bigger dies. However, this little handy guy is great to have on your desk so you can do quick die cutting. So I think these little guys are becoming more and more popular lately. And this one, as you can see, works great and does cut this intricate die quite nicely. Okay, so I die cut 4 of those Hello die cuts, and I just did this from some white cardstock, and I'm gluing them together so that I can have a stacked look. I really wanted some dimension to these die cuts. I'm just using some Collage medium to glue them together, but any glue should work. Once I'm done, I'm pressing that layered die cut into my VersaMark ink pad to cover it with VersaMark ink. Then I'm using my tweezers, and I'm going to dip this into some of that Altenew Platinum embossing powder. So I dipped it in there, and now I'm going to heat set it. And it was at this point that I decided I'd rather use the copper embossing powder. I just felt that since the copper was darker, it would stand out better. Never fear, I can completely change it at this point. I'm going to let that cool completely, press another layer of VersaMark ink onto it, and add the copper this time. So I'm just going to completely hide that platinum. So now I'm going to take this with my little tweezers and dip it into the copper and then heat set it again. Now I'm going to actually repeat that process a couple times so that I could have a nice thick layer of copper embossing powder on this and have this really smooth dimensional look to it. And the cool thing is when you press your VersaMark ink pad on this, some of the ink gets on the side of your stacked die cut, so the embossing kind of spreads over to the side. Really gives a beautiful embellishment. Okay, so after I've taken my tweezers off this, I just heat sit it again to remove any of the marks the tweezers left behind. Now I created a little small sentiment strip that says thinking of you. I'm going to glue that right onto my card. And then I'll use a strong liquid adhesive, this is Collage Medium, to glue my hello die cut right on top. I really like how adding those layers of the embossing powder and the stacked die cuts really makes that sentiment stand out against the busy background. I went ahead and put an acrylic block on top of that so that the die cut stays in contact with the card while it dries. Now I did want to mention that since this has beautiful heat embossing on it, metallic heat embossing, I thought it'd be fun to use a metallic envelope. These are from Simon Says Stamp and they all match the embossing powders perfectly. So it's a great way to kind of wrap the card all together. Okay, next I wanted to show you a simple example where I actually use multiple embossing powders on one stamped image. So this time I'm again using the spicy yogurt cardstock. I have my note card in there. Going to stamp the large flower from that same Altenew stamp set with VersaMark ink. And this time, instead of using one embossing powder on the image, I'm going to use 3. I'm going to allow them to blend together to give a really cool metallic kind of ombre look or have a little bit of variation to it. I'm using a spoon to just apply some of the rose gold towards the top of the image. You can see towards the top I put it on very heavily. But then I'm just going to kind of sprinkle a little bit on below that, just a little bit. This will help me to blend it into the next color. So I tapped off the excess and now I'm moving on to the platinum embossing powder. I wanted to have a soft blend. If I wanted to have more variation to this, I could have used the copper. Now I'm being careful to put some of that platinum on top of the rose gold that's already there. That'll help give it a blended look. This is a Tonic spoon that I'm using. It's really handy. It has 2 different spoon ends, and I find it's great for adding embossing powder. Okay, then I finally finished off with this silver embossing powder on the bottom. Make sure your gun is good and hot before you bring it to your card so you don't have warping, and check out that beautiful blended look from rose gold to silver. I again cut a piece of vellum to be the size of my note card, and I'm going to lay it over my card. Put the die cut right in place, lining it up with the flower below, putting some pieces of tape on it. Then I can take that vellum piece along with another piece of that spicy yogurt. This time I was smart enough to trim it a little bit smaller. So my spicy yogurt piece is about 4 by 5.25. Holding it centered behind that vellum, running it through my die cut machine, and that creates the flower die cut in the perfect place on that spicy yogurt cardstock. So I'm adding some adhesive to the back of that, removing the flower from the center, and now I can add this piece right onto the front of my note card. Now there are a couple little bits that I wanted to add into the center there, so I'm just going to use some foam adhesive to pop those into place also. I like to cut my foam adhesive squares in half or diagonally to create tiny little pieces to go behind small little die cuts like this. So there you can see that beautiful variation in embossing powder. I also took a thank you die cut and covered it with a few layers of copper embossing powder and added that to the card. And now I'm using some strong Collage Medium adhesive to add some silver gemstones just to kind of finish off that metallic look. And there you can see all that gorgeous embossing. I just love these powders. And also, this one matches nicely with those Simon Says Stamp metallic envelopes. I'm really a big fan of high quality envelopes. We spend so much time on these cards, it's definitely worth a few extra cents just to have a gorgeous matching envelope. Now before we go, I wanted to show you a couple other things. Remember this hello and thank you die cut? It actually is from the coordinating die set for this Altenew flower arrangement stamp set. This is a really cool and unique layering stamp set. I didn't get a chance to use it today, but I really like the sentiment stamps on this. And I also like that the coordinating die set includes that hello and thank you die cut. Really beautiful and intricate, matches the stamp set perfectly. I'm hoping to use this stamp set very soon because it layers beautifully and very easily. So that wraps it up. I wanted to share with you this fun idea of using your coordinating dies to create windows for your stamped images. If you're interested in these supplies, I have them in the YouTube description below, and head to my blog for much more information. In the middle are a couple other videos that might be interesting to you. I hope to see you back soon and have a great week.